Miss Patty, how are you today?
Good, Ryan. How are you?
I'm doing really, really well, and I'm really, really excited to have you on today. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I heard from a little birdie that you like to mail people lots of letters. Is that right?
I love direct mail.
All right.
Love it. Love it. Can't wait to share it with you.
We've talked today about Facebook advertising. We've talked about how to call people. We've talked about just being in the neighborhood and knocking on doors and just being part of that community in your neighborhood. So you're gonna round us out with mailing postcards and all sorts of direct mail. So tell us who you are first of all, and tell us a little bit about your production and what you've done.
So my name is Patty Accorto. I am out of the plantation office, L5L company. I run a small team in our market center. I have a director of operations and 2 buyer's agents. We just added the director of ops and the 1 buyer agent this year. I am on the ALC in the top teams for the region as well as our market center. Proud investor of our market center as well. And current volume last year, we did 81 units. It was my buyer's agent and myself. 26 million in volume, and we were just shy of the 1 million mark in GCI. So this year we will be walking across the stage.
Yeah. We're gonna make sure of that. That's my goal. Watch you walk across that stage. All right. So big portion of your business has come from direct mail. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So when I got my license back in 2004, direct mail was one of the items that real estate agents use. And when I got my license, I decided, you know what, that is one of the ways of advertising I was going to do, because back then we didn't have, the Facebooks, the social medias. You had print, you had magazines, you had the flyer that you advertised in. So I was brought into the real estate industry with postcards, direct mail. So I have continued since 2004. Throughout my real estate career with direct mail. I never stopped. I started off very small and just have grown over the years with the amount of direct mail that I send out. I hear some people say it's old school. I find it, most of my business comes from direct mail.
So on average, how much do you send out in a month?
So we mail every Wednesday. We typically drop about 7,000 to 10,000 postcards a month. Some months we actually drop newsletters, but my clients, my farm areas are getting mailed to every single month. I don't stop. I prepare my schedule in December for the following year of what was being sent out, and then I leverage it. So I don't touch it. It goes out and, the phone rings. So that's how I have done it. And, during COVID, we've actually increased some of those numbers in areas where we saw forbearances, some foreclosures and stuff like that.
Okay, so is there a way that you can track when those leads come in that it's coming from these direct mailers?
So, every single phone call that comes in that somebody is calling, regardless if they're a buyer or they're a seller, they're asking questions about real estate. One of the first questions I do ask is, how do you hear about me? And a lot of times people will say, you're in my mailbox every single week. Well, we're not in your mailbox every single week, but we are in it every single month. Sometimes twice a month. So we do source those out. I go on listing appointments. People have a stack of postcards from what I've sent them. Some people hold them 2-3 years. And, I get there and they're like, look, every time we get it, we put it in a drawer. So it's just being top of mind with it. And when we do get those calls, we're able to source where that business is coming from. And that's why we continue to do the direct mail as part of our lead gen.
So how many of these direct mailers do you typically get a response from on a monthly basis?
So typically what I average is every time a mailing goes out, I get between 4 and 10 phone calls. those phone calls can be either people that are looking to buy, looking to get a value of their house, sell, have a real estate question. So I always want the phone to ring to me. I always want to be the real estate resource for people because it's having that relationship with them, having that conversation, then put them on in command, dripping on them. And then those can be, in our pipeline for future business. So any phone call to me, I never feel is a wasted phone call because if they want to talk about real estate, they're more than welcome, to give me a call.
That's a really good conversation starter then. I'm just thinking on average 4 months a week. So if you're mailing out weekly and you get 4 to 10 calls, that's 16 to 40 calls a month.
Prior to COVID, when the market wasn't as so compressed with listings, I would average 3 to 5 listings a month just off of my direct mail.
Wow.
And that's why I continue to do it and I keep growing it. So, with the direct mail, we have farm areas, we have our sphere of influence, we have, other segments of areas that we go in after, different professions as well. So, we really have scaled it down where we know who we're targeting.
Absolutely. Some people in here are asking some questions, and we are going to get to these questions. I just want to make sure we go down this path first before we get to showing anything. You said you got 3 to 5 listings per month based upon that. So, how does that come about? What do they say to you when they call you? They just call you and say, "Hey, will you come list my house?"
Yeah. So, after doing direct mail since 2004 to the same neighborhoods, my sphere of influence is getting it. They have seen me over the years. So it's not like I start it today and then I skip a couple months and then I start up again in a month. Then I skip 4 months and then go back to mailing. It's a consistent system. And when you're consistent, you're always top of mind in front of people. So the direct mail, there may be people that aren't ready to buy or sell or transact in real estate right now, but they know that they're going to be getting something from you. They may not know how often, but they know periodically they're going to be getting that postcard in their mailbox. So, those calls are the ones that are like, you know what, you've been mailing to me. We see you all the time. We want you to come talk to about selling, about buying. And when I go there, they're ready to list. And I really believe it's having them know that I'm in business. So many times, even when markets are good and bad, people always have the perception, are you still in real estate? And at the very beginning of my career, that was one of the things that I knew that I wanted to make sure that nobody had to ask me. So, when a market is hot, people never know if you're in real estate, if you're that secret agent and you're not doing marketing. And also when the market turns. So I always have been consistent in good markets and bad markets. It doesn't matter. That's just one of the things that I have always done. And, so when people are ready to transact real estate needs, I'm there for them.
Do you advertise in any other way besides direct mail?
We do direct mail. We do, we do a lot of sponsorships in our farm areas. I'm very, this local schools, charities. If a kid calls me and says, "Hey, I live in the neighborhood and, I'm selling raffle tickets or candy bars," we're always the first to buy them. If someone reaches out that's in our sphere of influence, we're willing to donate baskets, etc. So we're very involved in the community as well as, the needs of the families. You can't always be about real estate. You always have to, give back and show that, you care. And that's one of the reasons I do not buy Zillow leads. I do not buy leads. Most of our stuff is sphere of influence, direct mail, community events, and B&I. So that's where our business is coming from. So the portion of my expense is direct mail.
right, so you're sending out 7 to 10,000 direct mails per month. So what does that look like in terms of cost?
So I always like to start small, because when when I first started in real estate, we had a budget of a family of $100 a month. At that time, $100 a month was what we could budget for my advertising. So I started small. I did spend $100 a month, and then as I closed deals, I would put a portion of my check into my business again. And then I grew over the years. So typically, to print the cards, you have a cost there. I have someone who actually labels them, drives them to the bulk mail facility in Miami, handles it all from start to finish. Typically, our expense runs, yearly, probably about 60,000. But when you see the return on GCI of right under $1 million, it's well worth it.
You can answer my next question.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You knew where I was going with that. It's always important. If you're going to spend the money on something, you want to make sure you see that ROI.
Yes, and we track it, but you don't have to start like that, because there are some people like, oh my gosh, that's crazy numbers. And I was in the same seat as a lot of people were when, back when I started it, it was like I would never be able to get to that point. But if you start small, what I always tell people is you have to start small and be consistent. Consistency is the most important thing. I've had agents that have reached out to me and said, you know what, I want to do 5,000 postcards. And I say, are you able to do that every single month if you close a deal or you don't close a deal? And their answer a lot of times is no. And I said, well, we need to scale you down to what you're able to afford regardless of the market so that you're consistent. So if it's 25 postcards or 25 letters, then do that. You're going to see a return on that. Or if you do 100. So it really depends on, financially where you are and what you're going to budget for direct mail.
Nice. All right, Patty. So some of the questions that people are going to ask is, what is it exactly that you're mailing out to everybody? It's always the main thing. You're doing it every single week. So is it all listings? Are you just sending out listings, or what exactly is it?
Okay, so I keep it very simple. When I tell them they're like, really? We send the same postcard out every single month, and I've been sending the same postcard out probably for 7 years. We update the pictures, we'll update the front of it. It's the same thing. So it's not like we are recreating the wheel every single month. A couple reasons why. Number one, you're going to save on printing costs for postcards. You're going to be able to bulk print, which is going to save you a lot of money versus, when we're printing 30,000 postcards versus printing 1,000 or 5,000. The other thing is that when you have to design postcards every single month, it's going to get in the way of you actually doing them and sending them out. And I was a component at the very beginning to not listen to someone who did the same system, where I wanted to recreate it every single month. And it just didn't work. I just found myself a lot of times just not being able to get it out. So we send the same postcard we have different postcards. Now I don't send all 7,000 of the same. We have different farm areas. So those farm areas are branded for the farm areas. For professionals, I actually hit different types of professionals, attorneys, etc. So I have a postcard for them. I have a postcard for our church areas and stuff like that. So I do have different branded ones, but that branded one goes out to the same mailing list month after month. We also send out newsletters every quarter. Those are actually more personalized. We do our farm areas. We do events throughout the year, and those postcards will be different. So depending on the event, we actually customize those to go out. But the main postcards, we're hitting are the same ones. I haven't been doing just sold and just listed postcards. Again, the only reason I don't do them, it doesn't mean it's right or wrong, is that if I'm going to send out, let's say, 500 postcards around the listing, I'd rather send it to 500 more people that I can actually hit every single month for the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. By having an open house, people are going to know that the house is for sale. When you put your sold writer up, same thing. So I really don't do just listed or just sold cards.
What is on your cards then?
What is on which card?
What does your cards look like? What are they? What's on it? Are you just saying just your branding and that's it?
So the front of the postcard, and I can send it out if anybody wants to reach out. I'm at patty@pattyaccorto.com. But the front of it is just a picture. Are you interested in buying, selling, or invest in real estate? The back of the postcard, I call them shout out boxes. I have one that says, do you want to know the value of your house? Are you behind or in forbearance with COVID? We have that on there. And then a call to action, please call or text me and my number. So they're very simple. They're not overly full of information. I think sometimes we like to overfill our postcards or our direct mail or even marketing. Less is better. So that's how our postcards are done. Full color, 9x11s. So
the main thing there is you're just hitting it with your brand constantly over and over.
Yes. Yes. And I don't change the brands. Like I've seen some people will start with one brand and then they'll switch to another, or they'll tweak the colors on it, and it's not consistent. So you've got to stay consistent no matter how much you want to start changing things. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just get it out. And I think that was one of the biggest lessons at the very beginning was it doesn't have to be perfect. Or we could spend days and weeks making sure a piece of mail is just perfect in order to send out.
I was trying to see if I had an example. I do, I think.
Oh, look at you, huh?
Yep. Let me see if this works. I don't know where this. Okay. I'm assuming this is an example of one.
We'll wait and see, huh? Surprise. Yeah, that's a very, very old one. But anyway, so the front of the postcard looks similar like that. And again, I can send you, samples out. And then the back would just have, a 3 shout out boxes and information about it, about call to action.
So the main thing is you made it lean and mean so you could just get it out as quickly as possible and just keep your brand in front of everybody, right?
Yeah, so the end of every year in November, I actually do my schedule for the year. At that time, I reprint my postcards. I reprint every 6 months, just in case the market changes and I need to tweak it. Like when COVID happened, we tweaked the cards so that it had more COVID writing information on it for call to actions. And so I reprint in December, and then my mailer has a schedule, and I have the addresses from my sphere of influence, my farm areas. It's building those databases that we all talk about, and having that information. Some of it is tedious. You've got to go through the tax records and copy and paste addresses for farm areas, etc. But you can hire someone, you can leverage that out to a high school student, put it in an Excel spreadsheet, and then you can download it to do labels, or a printing company to print those names and addresses out. And the other one thing that, I always recommend to people that are doing direct mail is always put, the name of the person and then or current resident. That way that direct mail piece will always stay at that mailbox versus being returned if they moved, or because with bulk mail, they don't return it. So, if they don't deliver it, it just goes in the garbage at the post office. So you just want to make sure that you put current resident, so that anybody that's vacant or anybody that the address is incorrect, you're just going to stay there.
And you are going through the tax records and pulling some of these though, right?
Yeah. Because you know what, I find, with farm areas and pulling third-party lists and stuff like that, while a lot of them are accurate, there's still a lot of incorrect information because they don't update as often as like the tax rolls. So like in Broward County, we close on a property today. Within 2 or 3 days, that new owner is already in our tax system. So depending on where you're pulling your information from, really just depends what type of data you're getting. And if you really want clean data, I mean, like my farm areas, I update them as people close in the neighborhood, even if it's not my sale, because I get alerted when there's a closed property, and then I go in and just update my spreadsheet so that I always have the correct data. You can always do it, quarterly, every 6 months, yearly. Just really depends on, what type of data you really want and what you're looking for. I mean, you could do the every door direct mail. We used to use it. It's just that, taking it to the post office and making sure it's bundled and, it has to get delivered to, certain postal routes, etc. That just wasn't something that I wanted to take on. It's probably 10 cents cheaper, but by the time and energy and everything was to get it out, it just wasn't worth it.
And you've been doing this for a long time. So do you have a specific printer you use to do these?
Yeah. So, again, you come across people by being around top people. So when I first wanted to start bulk mail, I actually went to the post office website, and they actually used to run, bulk mail seminars or direct mail seminars where you could actually go and listen to people talk about it. There would be vendors there, etc. So I got in there, and they at the post office, they gave us a list of people who they use a lot that were in there. They couldn't recommend one. And the guy I use, he's really not taking anyone new because I've had him for so long, and he only has X amount of people he does mailings for because he is a single man shop. But he's been phenomenal. I mean, once I got the leverage with him, my world changed with the direct mail.
Do you feel like the quality of the mailers matters?
It has to, the quality, what I have to say is you want to make sure that whoever's designing it is actually like a graphic designer or somebody who understands advertising. A lot of times I'll see agents, do something in like Word, and they print it out on postcards and it looks handmade. You want to always have that first impressions when someone picks up your any of your marketing material, that you are first class, because they automatically assume whatever you're sending out is how you're going to advertise their house. So it's very important to make sure that the colors, so whoever you're printing with, there's printers out there every day that are calling me and saying, hey, listen, I'll cut you a deal with printing if you come to me. But when you compare different printers and the quality of the print material that's coming out, you just always have to, and again, this is my opinion, you always want to make sure that you stand out from the rest and that you have quality paper, you have quality printing, you have something that has been done professional. Otherwise, they just feel like, it's a homemade card. And that was very, back in 2004, that was the biggest challenge, is everybody was just designing stuff with Paint Shop and all those programs back then.
Do I need to send a 3x5, or do I need to get one of those big, huge, obnoxious cards that barely fit in my mailbox?
Oh, so, it really depends. Again, it really depends on what you want to spend. My philosophy was, when I went with the 9x11s, was I wanted it to stick out from regular size envelopes. So if the mailman, I mean, nowadays it seems like since COVID, we don't get much mail, but previously you would get a whole bunch of mail, and I wanted my postcard to be always the one that stuck out behind all the envelopes so that it was noticeable. So that's why I went with the jumbo ones. But again, it really just depends on your budget. When you start looking at the cost now, with a 5x7 card or a jumbo card, or if you do it through command or whichever way you do it, it's really just going to come down to price and where your budget is with what you want to spend.
Okay. Just gonna pause here for a second because we're talking about these addresses and stuff and getting them from tax records and put them in. You can put everything into command. If you're gonna put everything into command and do this though, and you want to use the mailer labels up there, I'm just gonna give you a suggestion. Make sure that each contact, that you've got the address in there, and if it's a husband and wife, that they have the association in there as spouse, okay? And then when you're down where their actual address is in their contact, make sure that box that says same as mailing address is checked. If you don't have that box checked, if you try to export that mailing list so you can do labels, whether you're doing mailers or you're sending Christmas cards or whatever out, if you don't have that checked, it's not going to merge them together because you don't want to send one to the husband and one to the wife. You want to send it together. Saves you on cost a little bit there. Makes you look like you know what you're doing. And just if you make sure that's checked and you make sure that they have the association, you won't have any problems. It'll export it as a bound list. Any other suggestions you would give on creating that list, Patty?
No, some people like to blanket neighborhoods. Some people are more specific in certain buildings if they're doing condos and stuff. You just have to, figure what's going to work out best for you. And at the beginning, it's going to be time consuming, but it's worth the work at the very beginning. It's just like, command. It takes you time to get everything in, but once you get it set up, it just runs. So I always say, just make sure you get good information so that when you are sending them out, they're actually getting delivered to, the people that you want to send them to. And always put yourself on the list so you can see when you mail them and when you actually get them. That's another item that I would always recommend, just to make sure that what you're sending to the post office, or if you're having a third party do it for you, from the day that they say they get mailed to the day that it hits your mailbox. Like my mailer, I know he mails on Wednesday. By Friday, Saturday, the latest, I have one of the postcards for that week in my mailbox.
If you do use command, you can create the design in designs, and you can export or move that design over into the direct mailer portion of campaigns. And now that will use real mailers to send them out. Real mailers, the quality of their prints, I'm always going to be honest with you guys, is not the highest quality, but it's also not the lowest quality. It's a competitive quality, but if you want to get higher quality, like Patty wants hers to stand out. She wants to make sure she gets pickets. So she's got her own person that does them, and that's great. If I was to print them up, I would probably go with a little bit higher quality than what you get from real mailers. However, you can do all the design in command and designs, and you can export those. And I see somebody here, Melissa, in the chat saying she takes them and prints them at Office Depot. That's great. Or again, go find yourself somebody who you can create a relationship with and do that. You said something very important at the beginning, and this is something I always try and tell everybody when they ask me about doing mailers, if it's something they should do. I always tell everybody, if you're going to do it, you got to make sure you're consistent at it.
Mm-hmm.
You said that at the beginning several times. Consistency is very much the key in this. But I also think that you should go and look at your budget. Again, you said you started off with like $100 and did that. But you have to be able to not only spend $100, but be consistent in spending that $100. So you need to budget yourself for that over that time period. So don't do this for 6 months and then quit because you just don't plan on it. Make sure you're planning ahead. It's very, very important in anything you do. Same thing if you're doing Facebook. If you're going to do Facebook, don't just do it like one ad here, one ad there. It starts picking up steam. It's like that snowball effect. The more and more you do it, the more and more it's going to come to you. Would you agree, Patty?
I totally agree. So like when I teach my farming class, 12 to 18 months is realistic to start something, to see what your return on investment, if it's going to work or not. So 12 to 18 months, yes, it's a long time. You may get business in between, but just have that in mind. Whatever you start, that you have the budget and you have the system in place for at least 12 months.
Sounds just like a Facebook ad. It's usually
Mhm.
about 12 to 18 months for conversion.
Okay. So yeah, it's something that you're not going to start today and tomorrow get business. You may, but don't have that as your measurement.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm going to try and hit some of the questions in the chat here.
Okay.
See, how do you follow up on the farm area? Do you go door knocking at the homes, or do you mail postcards to them?
So our farm area, there's no solicitation, even though I live in the development. So my farm area, they get mailed. I sponsor a lot of community events. We do 4 community events a year. So we get, postcards out, we get Facebook ads out, we get, emails out to them, inviting them. As well as, when prior to COVID, when we actually had events, when the associations did have events, I sponsored a lot of it. Like I said, I sponsor a lot at the school. A lot of the kids know that if they need something, they can reach out to me. So it's just being involved. It's just like any other touch point or lead generation that you're doing.
Jenny wants to know if you've used RPR for getting addresses, if that's a good source.
I have not. I've always done, the the tax records, because those are the most up to date here in Broward County. I don't know anywhere else, but in Broward County, everything is done so quickly that that's where I pull mine.
And I already got that answered. It's like I've pretty much been hitting on a lot of the same questions. All right, so if you guys have any more questions that you think I may be missed, please put them in the chat now, or feel free to raise your hand. I'm happy to bring you in.
Hey, Patty, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. So I do have a quick question for you. What are some of the challenges that you've seen with doing direct mailers, especially for someone who might be starting the direct mailers?
I don't see any challenges. I think the biggest challenge that I would say is the consistency. Like a lot of people will say, I have, this month I'm going to send to 5,000 people because I have a couple $1,000s. And then next month they don't send to anybody because they didn't make anything and they're not spending anything. So I think the real challenge is whatever you decide to do is to start small and be consistent with it. You can always add to it. I always looked at it as a non-negotiable in my business. So to me, it was like paying the light bill. It was one of those things that I was committed to. And when you're committed to things, you make things happen. So I think the consistency and starting where you really want to see it with the end in mind.
Do you think it'd be good to start at a monthly base, weekly base, quarterly base?
Well, in the MREA, you want to touch them every single month. So, every 30 days you're hitting them. So I definitely would say once a month. So, for the new people that you haven't met, the 12 touch would be once a month. Then you could actually, nowadays you can put QR codes. Now with COVID, everyone switched over to QR codes and everybody knows how to use them. So now you can actually put QR codes on them and, perhaps send them to your website or, have them fill out a form to get a market analysis or an equity analysis on their house. So there's so many different ways that you can use direct mail that can have them reach back out to you without picking up the phone. Because what we find is people like to go through those avenues versus picking up the phone.
Now, I know you explained the different types of postcards that you've done. Would you say then that you found it more effective to have the general type, like the one that you showed as an example, where it was just your information, do you want to buy or sell, and then the history in the back, or be more specific to a listing that you have or something, which has yield more results?
I do it generic because I want to hit buyers and sellers. What I found at the very, very beginning, when I just did like a postcard, let's say I was looking for listings, then the people that were buyers thought I only dealt with listings and vice versa. So I want whoever's getting my marketing to know that I handle both buyers and sellers. So that was one of the things that I tweaked years and years ago when I was in a conference and someone brought that up. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. That the perception is, I keep advertising listings, or I keep advertising, are you looking to sell? And I'm losing out on the buyers, or I'm losing out on the sellers.
Good point. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so I'm going to share one of our, if you guys are looking to scrub your database a little bit to get these names up, this is a service that is a partner of ours called Likely AI. It was voted top AI innovator at Future, which is a production we put on for new tech coming into the real estate space, and especially in KW. They're very helpful. If you go to products right here, you can go to the, whoops. Let me just drop down here. You can go through likely sellers and get a likely list. So if you've got a neighborhood that you're farming and you want to see who's most likely to sell, you could go through this. You could also take your database and do a database refresh in there. And you can also look at COVID distressed properties in there. So you can scrub your database against them and they'll do it, and they're actually not very expensive. They're
Wonderful
using
tip, Ryan. Wonderful.
Check them out. And then if you want to, tell them that we sent you over, and they might try and help you out a little bit, give you a little bit of a discount to start trying. I know they had offered to us before that they'll do 200 free to just start off real quick to try it out. So you might want to check it out.
Oh, that's a great tip. Thank you so much. That will help me out a lot as well.
Even if you're door knocking, that's a good place to go start door knocking. This will tell you exactly what doors to go knock.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to use a lot of data points. You're going to look at the fact of how much mortgage room they've gotten that mortgage to be able to sell, how long they've lived in the home. They're going to look at lots of other data points that are outside of that, what they're buying. It's kind of scary how many data points they get on you. So utilize the tech that's there for you.
That was worth the $1 million paycheck soon, right, Ryan? Thank you.
Of course. Anybody else have any other questions?
And again, anybody of you guys that want to reach out to me or talk or do a Zoom call, feel free. It's Patty at pattyaccorto.com. I am in Plantation. So feel free to reach out to me, and I will make sure I get you on my calendar. I'm always willing to give back because someone always was there for me when I first started. So always just feel free to reach out to me.
Patty's really nice. She doesn't bite.
Hey, Patty, this is Max. Really appreciate the presentation, all the info you've shared here with us. I just had a quick question, if you don't mind, regarding the direct mailers that you mentioned at the beginning. I think it was 3 to 5 listings or so on average. Did you get a month from that? I was just curious, those listings that you get from your direct mailings, do you do anything in combination with that? So like door knocking or something like that? Or are these actually people that have never met you before and they call you up and say, hey, I want to sell my house?
They most of them have never met me. And because when you figure, and I don't know when Gary Keller actually, or when I started KW 10 years ago, my aha was that there was a realtor who specialized in the community that everyone thought was the best realtor, sold a lot, etc. And then they started advertising with the fictitious realtor's name and number. And then when they went back and they were calling that neighborhood and asking, if you were to sell your house today, who would you go with? And everybody went with the fictitious agent because they were getting hit every 30 days with a postcard. So since then, it has always been, I've been hitting the same farm areas for, 15 years. So 15 years, every single month, they're seeing my face. So you just become the name when they're thinking of buying and selling. Of course, everyone's going to know people that are going to, they have family members, they have friends. You're not going to win them all. But when you start and be consistent with it, it's a numbers game. It's just like your database. You can expect X amount of people with every, 100 people you have in your database.
Do you see any difference in the response rate depending on the segment you're targeting? So let's say if you do direct mailings to luxury properties versus you do to, let's say, middle-sized properties. You see any difference in the responses?
I mean, I see the more luxury over $1 million is a slower response. Things between like 2 and 6, 2 and 7, those responses are great.
Good point. Thank you.
So, it really depends. Yeah, everybody wants the luxury listings, but it takes a while because those people have their own armies around them. So it's you breaking into their sphere that they've already probably have or built already.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you go into, let's say, a neighborhood that is at 600 or 700,000, those people will be moving up into the luxury market. So if you catch those people, by the time they get to luxury, you're going to be the name in real estate that they know.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
She brainwashes them all with her card, and the people who are in luxury, they got somebody else picking their mail up for them, so they don't see it.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's just a whole different, when you really study the luxury markets and stuff, those people, they have their people around them already.
Yeah. Great.
So,
thank you.
She had to put up with me for years because she said she wants your preferred vendors to split the cost of your mailers.
I don't want to be tied to anybody, because what I have found is vendors get lazy, and if someone's not working out for our team, we look for another vendor. So I just don't, I don't want to rely on people, and so yeah, it's an expense. Yeah, it costs you, but you have to figure it's doing business. Maybe there's some other areas that you can get your vendors involved. Maybe it's at open houses. Maybe it's, an event that you invite people to. But yeah, because if you start with that, then their logos are going all over your postcards. And, if someone had a bad experience with, let's say, a franchise, and I'm just picking a franchise, let's say Truly Nolan. Let's say somebody had a bad experience with them, and you have a great relationship with them, and they see them on your postcard, they associate you with that bad experience that they had, and they're never going to call you. So you just have to watch what you put on your advertising.
Postcards in bulk. So for you to get that logo off there is going to take you a while, or it's going to be an extra cost.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
I have a question, Patty. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Let me ask you, so do you look at, say, your market share for communities to see if you're having success, or just your ROI?
Well, like my neighborhoods that I farm, they're my top 2 lead sources with closed volume. So yeah, every year I do so my farm areas are at the top, my sphere of influence. So I know those are the people that are getting mailed to. So it's like a no-brainer.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. But it's also tracking. You got to track as to, take your closed sales last year, the last 5 years, and see where they're actually coming from. So when we close a transaction, we track where that deal came from so that we would know, at the end of the year, where we're spending money and what's really working and what's not working.